Hi everyone, welcome back to the You Can Do STEM channel. My name is Sassina Hosa, and today we will be focusing on the Graduate Record Examination, or the GRE. I know it's probably the last thing that you want to talk about, but it is a very important component of your graduate school application packet. I will be discussing what the GRE is, some components that it contains, as well as pointers on when you can start studying for the GRE and some materials that I use to study for the GRE. So first we need to know what the GRE actually is and why it was created. So the Graduate Record Examination was created by the Educational Testing Services, or ETS. Individuals wanted to develop a way to provide both graduate and business schools with a common measure for comparing applicants' qualifications and preparedness for graduate level academic work. The GRE is a very important component of your application packet into graduate school. However, it's not the only component of your application packet, so please remember that. So what are the components of the GRE? It consists of 2 essays that you need to write, so it's called an analytical writing portion. There's the verbal reasoning portion, and then the quantitative reasoning portion. The first section, the analytical writing section, the score range that you could potentially see is anywhere from a 0 to a 6. A 0 means that you didn't do so great on the essays, and a 6 means you did really, really well on the essays. You'll have a total of 1 hour to complete this section, but in essence, you're going to be completing 2 30-minute essays. The first essay is called Analyze an Issue. Here I have posted the directions for that. So you'll be given a brief quotation that states or implies an issue of general interest and specific instructions on how to respond to that issue. Plan and compose a response in which you develop a position on the issue according to the specific instructions. The Analyze an Argument essay. You'll be given a short passage that presents an argument and specific instructions on how to respond to that passage. Plan and compose a response in which you will analyze the passage according to the specific instructions. Next, we have the verbal reasoning section. In this section, the score range is now 130 to 170. There's a total of 20 questions that you'll be asked to answer, and you'll have 30 minutes to complete this section. So some of the questions that you might come across include what are called text completion questions, and I have an example of one here. Basically, you're given a passage or you're given a sentence and asked to fill in the blank with one of the many words provided to complete the sentence and to make sure that it makes sense. You'll have anywhere from 1 to 3 blanks. This example has 3 blanks. In order to get this question correct, you have to answer all 3 blanks correctly. If you answer 2 out of the 3, you get the question wrong ultimately. Next, we have reading comprehension questions, where basically it's almost something like you did in grade school, where you read a passage and then answer questions about that passage. The questions can consist of multiple choice, but it can also consist of you considering 3 separate choices and selecting one that applies to the passage. And it also consists of selecting a sentence from a given passage that answers the question provided. So in this example, select the sentence that distinguishes 2 ways of integrating rock and classical music within the passage. And also there are sentence equivalents. Basically fill in a single blank with 2 choices that create 2 coherent sentences that are logically similar in meaning. So basically the big part of verbal reasoning is knowing your vocabulary. So any reading that you do, the use of flashcards, all of those things can be very helpful in helping you learn as much words as possible before taking the GRE. The last section is the quantitative reasoning section. It doesn't necessarily have to be the last section, but it will be in the case that I'm describing these sections. So quantitative reasoning consists of quantitative comparison questions, so like the question presented here. Lionel is younger than Maria. Quantity A, twice Lionel's age, or quantity B, Maria's age. So which one is greater? Quantity A, quantity B, the 2 quantities are equal, or the relationship cannot be determined by the information given. Another question that you'll see are problem-solving questions, and that could either be multiple choice, which is presented here, or a numerical entry question. And there is a third section that could either be verbal or quantitative, and it is not scored. ETS will throw in a section of either quantitative reasoning or verbal reasoning. It'll be, again, 20 questions, and they're just kind of testing the waters with those questions. However, the downside about that is that you don't know which section of either the quantitative or the verbal reasoning is the one that's kind of just their experiment. So you could think that any of them could be the one that you're actually scored on. Those are the sections. I've provided some sample questions taken from the ets.org website. I'll provide the link below. Please visit the ets.org website. It provides in-depth discussion of each question type, so you can learn more about study tips on how to answer each question. You can see explanations of why certain answers aren't correct. I'll also put some links to other sites that I use to help me prepare. So one question that you're probably not thinking about, but definitely should be on your radar, is how are you going to pay for the GRE? When I took the GRE back in 2016, it was $195 per test. I took the test twice. So that was around $390 in total that I spent on just taking the test. And then after you've taken the test, you have to then send your scores out to schools. I was applying to a total of 20 schools, and so I had to send my GRE score 20 times. Each time I had to send a score, it was $27. Turns out I spent almost $1,000 in total on this whole GRE portion, and that's not even talking about how much it costs to apply to graduate school. Try to now save up as much money as you can in order to be prepared for this next step in your life. There are other ways that you can pay for the test. There are programs that I'll provide links to that actually provides vouchers for individuals who need financial aid to take the test. So if you look online for any of these programs, you'll find that there are help for those with financial need to pay for the GRE without actually having to spend the money yourself. Another thing you need to think about is when you want to start studying for the GRE. I've heard many people say you're never going to be ready for the GRE. The things that they ask on the GRE is so specific, and so it's hard to study for it. I started studying for it at least 6 months before I was going to take it. You can start studying for it now, even if you're planning on taking it years later. In regard to studying for the GRE, do what works for you. So with me, I read a lot of books to try and build up my vocabulary. I also did flashcards to try and learn new words as quick as possible. Try and make a routine out of studying. Make sure that you do those practice tests, so at least do 1 practice test a week, see where you land, and then see what you need to work on. So a good thing about the practice test is that you can see specific questions that you got wrong. So if they're a sentence completion question or a quantity comparison question, you now know that those are the questions that you need to focus on. So then focus on those questions for another week, do another practice test, and see if any of the studying that you've done helped out. And you can always take the GRE more than once. I hope this video was helpful in teaching you about what the GRE is, why it was created, what the components of the GRE consist of, as well as some things that I did to study for the GRE. Last thing I want to just note is that many schools are now not requiring you to turn in your GRE score. And that's because the GRE does not define you. You are much more than your GRE score, and a lot of the things that makes a great graduate student isn't what is being questioned on the GRE. So a lot of faculty are beginning to realize that, and thankfully it is allowing individuals like me to get into graduate school. There is a link I will provide of schools that aren't requiring GRE scores anymore, especially in STEM fields, so you can check that out. But if you are applying to schools that do require the GRE, don't fret it. The GRE, again, is only one component of your application packet, and you are much more than just your GRE score.